Chef Andrew Gruel, thank you so much for chatting with me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. I discovered you recently on social media because I think you were posting about California business things and fish and seafood and just living in SoCal. You live in my hometown area where I grew up, so I found that to be really, really cool. And I figured we should connect and you should share your story. Why don't you start with introducing yourself and explain how you got wrapped into the food industry?
Excellent. Well, my name is Andrew Gruel. I'm the chef and owner of Slapfish Restaurant Group and a couple other restaurant concepts. We're based out of Southern California, Huntington Beach specifically. A little bit about Slapfish. It is it's a seafood concept that revolves around the idea of eating better, well-managed seafood. But really, our ultimate goal is to get people to eat more of the right types of seafood. I started it actually as a food truck back in 2011. Kind of roaming the streets of Orange County. Nice. From South County all the way up. And then we grew and scaled pretty quickly. I built it to scale, and then we opened our first brick and mortar in 2012. We've got about 27 locations right now, and just trying to spread that good, fun seafood word. So that's a bit about Slapfish.
Yeah, and did you grow up fishing, liking the seafaring type of life? What led you specifically to focus on seafood?
Yeah, well, my father was a pirate, and no, I'm just kidding. I always loved fishing, right? I did grow up fishing. I grew up in Jersey on the East Coast, it was like fishing from a young age, all the cliched stories, dad, son, etc. And when I got into food, I was really I was interested in seafood, right? And as I went through the ranks, I started noticing a lot of different species of seafood change so quickly. And I just, being a young apprentice, hearing different things about like, oh, this isn't available and that isn't available. I started studying seafood as a trade pretty closely, but more from the culinary side of things. And all the restaurants I was working at, seafood was always something I was focused on. And then when the economy kind of tanked in 2008, I guess it was, I had gotten laid off from a chef job in New Jersey. And I said, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity to follow through on a passion project of mine, which really was in that kind of sustainable seafood space. I wanted to learn more about it. And I had an opportunity to start a nonprofit sustainable seafood program out at the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California.
That's awesome.
And the crux of the program was kind of similar to what our mission is now with Slapfish, is getting people to eat more of the right types of seafood, understanding seafood aquaculture, all the different elements, educating both consumers and chefs more specifically on what sustainable seafood means. Most of the seafood, around 80% of the seafood we consume, is consumed in restaurants. So if we can educate the chefs, then that'll trickle down to the consumer. And that was the crux of the program. And that really blossomed into Slapfish.
And what seafood or fish in particular do you guys focus on that your customers typically eat?
Everything, right? So, really it changes frequently. The way I built the menu was more of a framework. There's some culinary architecture in there, but we can interchange and exchange the fish based upon seasonality, sustainability, new scientific data. But one of our main focuses is serving the underutilized species, right? Fish that maybe people don't know about. It's not always kind of that top three. It's, lesser known species, a lot of bycatch, which is the incidental catch within a fishery, and just getting people to appreciate seafood more in general.
Yeah, and I think I had seen in my research of kind of some species you focused on. You've even focused on some freshwater. I think you once have praised like blue cats, which are invasive here in the Chesapeake and kind of East Coast region, and some other like less attractive fish, which are actually really good eating.
Yeah, definitely. I love Chesapeake blue catfish. Love the Lake Superior whitefish, a lot of the lake fish, but really into trout lately too. I know you're a big trout fisher person. And, I love what's happening nowadays with a lot of trout aquaculture as well. And then some of the more, your steelhead species, kind of freshwater, saltwater fish. I wish I could say, we would start serving alligator gar, but no, I'm kidding. We did try some carp ribs. That was an interesting experiment. No,
I think people should get more comfortable eating fish. And I I would say that I was reluctant, like, although I love fishing, like I am also an equal opportunity eater when the conditions permit it, because so many people, and I mean, catch and release is fine, especially if the conditions permit it or require you to do it. But so many people, I think, are losing out on just eating this really great source of protein and packed with all these different vitamins and minerals that are essential for your health. Do you notice that people, customers in particular, are interested in eating fish because they see that their food is not being sourced properly? Because I think people want to eat and know where their food is coming from.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the initial drive is the health and the sustainability, and people understand and recognize that seafood is the healthiest protein. I mean, we did these surveys where I would ask people, of a choice of protein, right? Chicken, beef, seafood, etc. And everyone unequivocally chose seafood, but yet we don't consume much seafood in the U.S. So as we dug deeper into that conundrum, really it exhibited that people want to eat more seafood. They're just confused about it because there's a lot of misconceptions in the press, and there's a lot of these ideas like mercury and PCBs and fish farming, etc. So at the end of the day, people just relegate to chicken.
Yeah, that's a very safe choice, kind of a bland choice. I love chicken, but yeah, I think a lot of the labels that are placed on, and maybe certain species, I know swordfish certainly do contain high contents of mercury, but I think a lot of kind of these inconclusive thoughts on different fish kind of deter people from eating it. They get scared because it looks strange or the texture is kind of odd looking, and they don't want to try it because it kind of is not it's too adventurous for their taste buds.
Exactly. And that's where, from a culinary perspective, when creating Slapfish, the goal is to actually allow our concept to almost be like a gateway. We target non-fish eaters. So every single time we get a Yelp review or some sort of a comment or feedback where someone says, I didn't eat seafood or I don't eat seafood, but I came here and it's changed my mind, it's changed my perspective, that's a huge win for us.
That's awesome. That's a good way to convert people in. And what are some typical menu items or popular menu items that customers enjoy?
Well, we're well known for a lot of our lobster dishes, which really is kind of shooting fish in a barrel, pun intended. Our lobster grilled cheese, half crab, half lobster, cooked to kind of a melting tenderness. But then on the the seafood side, in terms of finfish, we really pride ourselves on some massive sandwiches. One of our taglines is "You'll cheat on your burger for this." So our real fish sandwich, we do a Dagwood, which is really a fish and chips on a sandwich. We do, and named after the old Dagwood cartoon, always building the sandwich. All of our fish bowls and burritos are really, really popular. So we take comfortable, well-known dishes that people are already familiar with, and then we just pretty much add a seafood spin to it.
That's awesome. That's a good way to get people who are skeptical to like fish.
Yeah, exactly.
And talk about your experience on the Food Network. I think some followers of yours, and I know a lot of people in politics are discovering your stuff, especially those who kind of follow what happens in California too, about your past work on Food Network. So what was that experience like?
It's great. I mean, look, once in a lifetime opportunity. It kind of germinated from when we were on the food truck. We did a short episode on Cooking Channel for Eat Street was the name of the show. And somehow one of the producers connected me back from that episode, and they were looking to launch a new food truck series called Food Truck Face Off, which was a co-production between Food Network Canada and Food Network US. And they looped me into that as a judge, which was really exciting. We shot a pilot, and then that show got picked up. And then that I was fortunate enough from there to go and host and launch another show on FYI Network after it was purchased from was it A&E. And we launched a show called Say It to My Face. And then I went back and did some Food Network judging as well. So it's been fun through this kind of business adventure, being able to pepper in some of the television and the media in addition.
And you currently host a radio show, right?
Yeah, I co-host a radio show out of SoCal here, the SoCal Restaurant Show. It's actually right out of the Anaheim Angels stadium studios. So nice, a great local show, food, wine, everything travel.
Yeah, you can't go. I mean, it's perfect for California.
Yeah.
California is the center of food and wine and just all delicious goodness. I do miss that about living in California. We do have a little bit of a food culture here in the DC metro area, but not as, I would say, versatile as California, but it's getting there, slowly but surely.
Yeah. Look, grass is always greener. I always say I wish I was back on the East Coast. When I get into the DMV area, I'm so excited about the food. And then people are like, well, I'd rather be in California. So, you know.
Yeah, and I think actually one of your franchises is in Ballston Mall. I haven't seen it yet. I've been in the mall, but I didn't see your store there. And I think you guys opened a DC location in your opening, or you opened a Rockville, Maryland one. So you guys are starting to get a little bit of some play here too, which is really nice.
Yeah, we've got some great partners out there. The other one we're in One Loudon, which is over in Ashburn.
Oh yeah, that's a great area. I bet that's. I mean, despite COVID, I bet that's still kind of a good spot for people to visit.
It is. Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, kind of speaking of the virus, I know everyone talks about this, but I think I first took notice of your social media musings because you were talking about how I think Gavin Newsom was placing further burdens on the business. And I think across the country, people just see different small businesses or conglomerates like you who employ franchisees really struggling and just having a difficult time to kind of recalibrate and to kind of operate. So what has been your experience in these last few months? Has it been hard to do business? How about your employees? What are they currently feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough on the employees. It's sorry about that. You there?
You're good.
Oh, sorry. It's really tough on the employees. It's you know, I always want to be sensitive about what I say when it comes to COVID, but I've found that can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, cool. Sorry, someone called in and it was, but I found it's a real sensitive topic, obviously. But at the end of the day, for us, it's about planning, right? So if we don't have the ability to plan the way in which the business is going to operate, and we're not getting much notice on a lot of these regulations, it's like they come down within seconds, and we have no heads up on that, and then we're not getting local government support when it comes to a lot of the shutdowns or it comes to the restrictions. So, you know, I'm you know, I would classify myself to some degree as a limited government person. But at the same rate, right now, we need a lot of government assistance when it comes to navigating through these restrictions and navigating through this gauntlet of what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing when it comes to coronavirus. So, you know, we've been kind of looking to the government to some degree, local governments, whether it's health departments, Orange County Department of Health, to say to us, hey guys, here's how you should be setting up the restaurants, whether indoor or outdoor dining. And here's kind of a little, you know, a calculus for success that we've seen within the restaurant industry, but there really isn't any of that assistance. So we've had to navigate that, and we've had to kind of try and figure out how we're going to hire and how we're going to operate. We don't necessarily know what's coming down the pipeline when it comes to, you know, employee restrictions and indoor, outdoor dining, et cetera.
Yeah, I'd heard from friends back in Orange County, because Orange County, you guys were dealing with like beach closures and just these like ridiculous kind of overplayed moves from Sacramento to like specifically signaling out Orange County. And I know for businesses there, like it's a very tourist-based economy. And if you don't have people kind of inputting their dollars into the area, it's really, really tough, even for an affluent area or a more economically prosperous area like Orange County. So I know for that region, and especially San Diego too, it's been a little more challenging, where you guys want to kind of do, obviously within the confines of CDC regulations, but like give a little more leeway so people could actually operate their shops, open, accommodate different standards, have outdoor seating, things of that sort. So I know it's a little different all across California as to how the counties have been treating the different businesses. But I know food operations just all across the country have had a difficult time. And I was just curious to see how you're navigating that.
You know, for us, it's just difficult because it seems very political, right? So, you know, Orange County's numbers were great and you know, really doing well in the beginning, but then the restrictions kept coming down and specifically targeting Orange County. And then it starts with these lawsuits, and then it just becomes about ego. And it's really absurd when it gets to that level. And where I got very frustrated was leading into the 4th of July weekend. That's our week for our coastal locations, where you really kind of go into profitability. And when it was like Wednesday before the 4th of July, they shut down all the beaches. Now, the one common denominator that we've all seen is that outdoor transmission is, you know, minimal, and that being outdoors and being socially distant in areas, wide open air areas, is a good thing. So they're shutting down the beaches, which that messaging was so confusing. And then we went, like, for example, for us, our location, we're right in Laguna Beach on Broadway and PCH. I mean, you know, kind of main and main. We did, I want to say we were down like 75% of what we expected. So we purchased all this food for a huge weekend, and they shut it down. We lost all the product, and we didn't even come close to hitting our numbers. But yet all the people, all the tourists were already in town, right? So then they all jam into backyard barbecues as opposed to being out on the beach. And then 3 weeks later, they start talking about a spike. And it's like, well, I mean, I think we can kind of follow the timeline there.
Yeah, that seems a little ridiculous when it comes to things like that, especially at the cost it comes for business owners like yourself, who are scrapping kind of the barrel to you know, keep operations open and to fund your employees and all that. So it just seems like, yeah, a lot of businesses are facing unnecessary regulation or burdens, I would say, on top of difficulty with maintaining operations too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think what else. And I can edit this out too, so don't worry. But so I saw, and I really love, I think my listeners will appreciate the fact that you always post with your family, with your wife and your kids. And I saw that you posted with a tuna, a bluefin tuna. And you didn't get that yourself, or did you go fish for that, or you outsourced the commercial fishermen to get that for you?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of local fishermen here who have their commercial fishing license and wholesale license, who just know that if they catch something last minute, we're going to buy it, right? So like, I'm kind of their go-to, you know, their gray market fish dealer, if you will. I don't want to say black market because they're legal, but yeah, so we've got guys that just go out. Most of them go off either Long Beach or Dana Point, and bluefin are hitting big time right now. And I think the bluefin specifically is a real interesting conversation, especially when it comes to conservation, because bluefin's gotten a really it's gotten a lot of attention, right? Because it's virtually extinct commercially, that, you know, as a pelagic species, highly migratory, and really hard to manage because you have multiple jurisdictions. It can be in one country's waters one day and another the next day. But the local species of bluefin tuna is actually well managed by the National Marine Fisheries Service, part of NOAA, and the populations are at you know, a real sustainable biomass. So that's a fish that we love to support the local fishermen and serve out of the restaurant.
Yeah. Have you heard much about the Marine Land Protection Act restrictions? I know you've probably been in California for a good time, but they want to place actually further restrictions. This is more for recreation, but I bet the commercial anglers will be adversely affected by this too. But I've seen this, and like, California, everyone knows it's pretty crazy, but like, to even make fishing a lot more restrictive, have your contractors complained about those restrictions or further regulations on that too? Even though they follow the guidelines, they're not catching more than they're allotted each year. So what is kind of the thoughts of people there, that your suppliers?
Yeah, well, the suppliers are, you know, since most of them are really small boutique, you know, it doesn't affect them as much, but I know that a lot of the commercial fishermen obviously take issue with that, MLPA, and there's, you know, I mean, there's obviously science on all sides of this. There's certain restrictions. I think in California, it's been just like politics anywhere, right? I mean, it's so polarized and, you know, tribalized, and you kind of dig in on both sides, and it's hard to find compromise. And I think in California, that's happened between the commercial fishermen and a lot of those in the on the environmental side that are lobbying for these restrictions to be put in place. And, you know, for us, it's like we want to protect the ocean, but we also want to have a healthy, you know, vibrant economy surrounding the ocean. So there's certainly a push and pull when it comes to the ways in which you can control and manage that, right? So for me, I always revert back to this conversation about aquaculture, stock fortification, and I think creating jobs through open ocean aquaculture, especially along the California Bight line. So for me, it's been difficult watching commercial fishermen avoid engaging in that conversation when a lot of what they can be doing is transferring some of their assets and their strengths into possibly supporting the aquaculture side of this. California right now doesn't necessarily, because it's federal waters, they don't have really, overall we don't have a framework for an open ocean aquaculture policy. A lot of it's done from the Department of Fish and Game in that, like, right on that coastline there. But there are some absolutely amazing aquaculture projects that are done here. So a lot of that, sorry, I digress, but, you know.
No, that's very fascinating. Continue. Yeah.
Just varying interests, right? As is always the case. And, you know, I always make the joke. I say, when does a developer become an environmentalist? And the answer is when they buy their house at the beach. But, you know, I think we see some of that too here in California, especially because when it comes to salmon, for example, you notice they breed in freshwater, right? So they swim upstream. Their breeding grounds are actually what are being destroyed. It's not the effect of, it's not what's happening in the ocean. It's the breeding grounds that have just been completely decimated because they've been converting the water rights, thus eliminating really any industry for California salmon.
Yeah, and also I think predatory California sea lions were also a problem too, on top of those environmental strains as well. I think one of the few bipartisan laws that Congress got together and agreed with, and I think this impacted the Pacific Northwest, but probably anywhere where there's a vibrant salmon fishery, but more specifically the Pacific Northwest region, where they made it so that you can, amended the Marine Mammal Protection Act, where you can actually, I think local tribes and state agencies can cull numbers because they're very voracious and they love salmon too. So they have that in place too for certain areas that are overburdened. Yeah.
You know, scientifically, and I always wondered this, was there a boom in the population of the sea lions as a result of a decrease in population of sharks? I always wonder about that biodynamic relationship because, you know, with sharks being so overfished.
Right. I don't know about in this case. I just know that probably this law, kind of like an Endangered Species Act law, when it's placed in and there's no management after the species has been recovered or brought back to healthy levels, sometimes they kind of just get out of control and they prey on salmon, endangered salmon in this. So that's what I saw it with there. And actually, speaking of salmon, I don't know if you've seen this or if you would be open to this, because I know you like and have talked at length about supporting fish farming efforts, but it was just announced in Maryland's Eastern Shore starting, I think, next year. They're going to open up the first private salmon farm in the United States to kind of offset the reliance on foreign salmon. Yeah. And it's going to be like a multi-billion-dollar project, and it's really fascinating. So I was curious if you like those type of efforts, and because it's not going to be recreational or commercial so much. They will sell it in stores, but it's not going to. They're not going to intertwine with anything in the wild. It's a land-based actually program too, not so much in the bay. But they're going to be creating a operation across the river in the Eastern Shore doing that.
Yeah, you know, there's been a huge push behind a lot of the land-based salmon farming. What I've seen though is that, and I don't want to be contrarian, but I just don't know if there's a long-term financial sustainability because the energy input and cost of doing land-based when you've got a natural environment utilizing the ocean when done properly. Like they're talking about it, you have to have such massive scale. And I've tried so many of these farm salmon products that are all through closed contained aquaculture, and they're amazing, right? So I'm not complaining as a consumer. What I've found really fascinating is this stock fortification piece, right? So if you go on the Alaskan Department of Fish and Game, you can see upwards of 60% of all the seafood in Alaska, salmon, starts off in hatcheries, right? Mm-hmm. So you can fortify these stocks, and trust me, I get a lot of slack for bringing this up. That's why ASME, the Alaskan Seafood Marketing Institute, probably doesn't like me. But because they market it all as Alaskan wild, which is fine, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not 100% wild if it starts off in a hatchery, right? It's fortified because they release them into the wild, and then they catch them commercially. And I think it's a beautiful mechanism through which they can keep those stocks vibrant and alive. And Alaska, geez, they do an unbelievable job managing their fisheries. But if we can see some more of that stock fortification, they do it in SoCal with the familiar with the white sea bass.
Yeah, I think I remember that species, but I didn't know they do that for them. That's interesting.
Yeah, the white sea bass went commercially extinct in the 80s. And then they started a program at Hubs the hub's research to fortify it, right? So you have these grow out pens. They have them right here in Huntington Beach. It's funny, right in the harbor. They have all these grow out pens, and then once again, they just release them into the wild. So they're fortifying these stocks, and now the stock is like at its maximum sustainable yield. Decades later, it's a real fascinating success story.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, because I think a big conversation I've been seeing in the fishing industry and conservation is how you can find these innovative means to, let's say, maybe locally sourced salmon kind of through these private farms, and whether or not private technology can come in and actually help correct a problem or a government problem. And I think that's a really good direction that environmentalism is heading, because when you rely on it so much, and you probably understand and relate to this viewpoint too, when the government comes in, oftentimes it can further hinder certain progress or certain enhancement of species. So it's been very interesting to see that. I don't know how the salmon farm in Maryland is going to go, but I was just very piqued by it, by a friend who sent it to me who works in DNR.
Yeah. Well, I will say, and I always bring this up with a lot of my friends, as one who's really kind of, I bounce around from party to party, just on various issues. I always say the one unifier amongst most, people who are, let's say, from the perspective of at least a hobby interested in politics, is seafood, right, or food in general. Like it's a real common denominator, and it can bring people together. That's always my joke about food politics. I'm going to start a new political party. But if you look at like the Drake's Bay oysters and the way in which the federal government has stepped in and shut down some of these oyster farms, which is just unbelievable, because, I mean, as you know, oyster farming is like the most environmentally, it almost has a negative footprint, right? Because it's so environmentally friendly. And what you can do, actually cleaning the ocean with oysters and producing, a high quality food item. You'd think there'd be oyster farms just peppered throughout the entire exclusive economic zone, right? It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it kind of goes to this like local war movement where people want to like create something sustainable here. They want to employ local people. I keep seeing this on the Chesapeake, like they have it for oysters. I think they have it for scallops too. I think there's a burgeoning scallop market on the eastern shore, and for the Chesapeake Bay too. So or lower Chesapeake Bay towards the ocean. And it's really interesting just to see people still engaging in those waterman activities, despite just kind of competing forces or just maybe the phasing out of the industry.
Yep. And it's going back to what you mentioned about when the government steps in. I always talk about the unintended consequences of the, such a strong arm getting involved in industry. And I had posted this on my social the other day. And I use this as a prime example because it's really relevant to our time right now, is that when COVID hit, all the businesses were relegated to using these third-party delivery outlets. So government stepped in and started saying, okay, well, we're going to do the right thing, and we're going to cap the fees that these delivery platforms are allowed to charge businesses, right? Okay, good intention, because 30% out of my pocket, that's not just my net profit, that's 20% putting me into the red if I'm a 10% business, right? The government steps in and says, okay, well, now we're going to mandate it. So what the businesses did, right, your Uber Eats of the world, was they said, okay, well, now we're losing our revenue. So how are we going to make up for that? So they stopped marketing businesses on their platform to save the money, right? Because they had to cut corners too. And what it ended up doing was it ended up driving business away from the small local businesses, because they didn't have the namesake value when you went on the platform. And then it increased sales for your big chains because it already had that national branding awareness. So in now taking a step back, they come in to help the little business, but it ended up hurting the little business. The idea was good, but the unintended consequence was that it ended up pushing the little business further down that kind of marketing chain within the platforms themselves. The same happens in the environment too.
Yes, that's why everyone says government that is best is one that governs least. For more efficiency most of the time. I would say most of the time that's kind of how I feel about it. With obviously you posting with your kids and your family, Have you taught them how to do sustainable stuff? And do you take your kids fishing too, or to the outdoors? I saw that you posted that you guys went to the redwood forest. So how integral is it to kind of keep your kids aware of what's going on and how to foster true stewardship, even through someone like yourself who works in the food industry?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's so valuable and important. So, the beauty of being so close to such an amazing aquarium like the Aquarium of the Pacific and being so involved in it is that from a young age, the kids were able to really explore alongside the education arm of this, right? Of course, kids going to an aquarium, it's about look, touch, see, feel. It's just about a lot of colors and things underwater, but they're slowly learning, and that same effect applies in life. We always take the kids absolutely everywhere. For us, we're not an iPad family. Don't get me wrong. It definitely helps from time to time.
That's good.
But it's about just like their education, getting muddy, getting dirty. I joke and I post on social. You may or may not have seen it with like the kids doing the dishes and working in the restaurants. But that really is their education right now. Like they do come to the restaurants with me every single day. They go out when I'm picking up the fish. When we got that bluefin, the guy called me, it was like 10:15 at night. And shame on me as a father. I definitely don't put the kids to bed early. I let them sleep in. But I was trying to get my son to sleep, and I get this text message, and I'm just like, heck, he's coming with me to the restaurant. So we drive all the way to the restaurant, and these guys pull up with their trailer and their full boat. The fish are in the boat still. My son gets to experience that and see it and, break down the tuna with me and touch it and feel it. And then the whole ride home, we get to talk about kind of the history of the species and how they live. And then he wanted to watch videos of it. And then his sister wanted to understand about what they eat and then all the little fish. So it's so important. But they got to see it. They've got to touch it. They've got to engage with it.
It is so true, because I feel like I don't have kids yet, but if I do one day, I would probably be like, no technology for you. You got to get your hands dirty. You got to go fishing. You got to see nature. You got to enjoy it. And that's really good that you get your kids involved in that, because so many, I see like friends' kids and they're giving them these like tablets and they're not even like 2-3 years old. And I'm like, oh, what are you doing? You shouldn't be doing this. Like take them out to nature, do something more productive so they don't have their intellectual growth stunted.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. The tablets help from time to time.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
But what's nice is that if you can use them as a tool alongside, right?
Sure.
So, for example, when my son is asking all these questions about the bluefin tuna, to then be able to pull out a YouTube video and show him the tuna underwater or what a purse seine net is and how they overfish and have bycatch within that fishery, like in the Spanish fishery, right? I showed him. And then he's like, why is it called a purse seine net? And it's like, you explain to him about these different fishing methods. And then indirectly, they just learned about bycatch. So it's kind of nice to explain it and then show them utilizing these tools, but definitely not a crutch. And it's cool. Cause like we were up at Big Sur and they didn't touch their eye. They never even asked for them, like they all they want to do is walk and explore and go on the beach and see the, what are they? The elephant seals. I don't know if you've ever been up there or not.
I think I did when I was a kid. I don't remember elephant seals. I remember kind of going below Big Sur. It's been a while. I only went to NorCal like maybe 2 or 3 times.
It was my first time up there because I'm not from California. My wife took me up. They have the huge Hearst Castle there, and he was really into exotic animals. So you're driving along the coast, and on the left side you've got these elephant seals, which are just unbelievable, massive species. Yeah. And then you look to the right, and there's zebras running in a field with like free-range cattle. And you're like, where the heck am I?
California. I mean, there's a lot of great, I know some people don't like zoos, but I learned a lot and developed my love of animals from going to the San Diego Zoo and the Escondido Wildlife Park. I think people misinterpret what those are too and how valuable those are. But you can see like a confluence of exotics and then like your domestic animals, farm animals. It's a good thing California has.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Chef Gruel, where can everyone connect with you, check out your business and support you or become patrons of Slapfish?
Well, I'm under Chef Gruel on Twitter. My Instagram is Andrew Gruel. Slapfish is at Slapfish across all the platforms. I mean, if anybody's got any questions, they can email me, just my name, andrewgruel@gmail.com, or swing by any of the restaurants and allow me to give you a tasting.
That's awesome. Very cool. This has been so much fun. I am so glad that we got to chat, and you're just a repository of information. You know so much more, I think, than most people do when it comes to sustainability and sourcing seafood and why seafood is amazing. Thank you so much, Chef Gruel, for
Thank
speaking.
you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely.